If you ever find a tomb with a warning carved into solid stone, do yourself a favor and walk away. Emma Carter would have laughed at that advice 24 hours earlier. By now, she would have given anything to hear it before the worst Tuesday of her life began. The rain had started just after lunch, turning the narrow mountain road into a ribbon of mud that swallowed the tires of her aging pickup truck. Her GPS had lost signal miles ago. Her phone battery hovered at 3%, and the freelance photography assignment that was supposed to pay her overdue rent had turned into another dead end. The abandoned cemetery she had driven 200 miles to document looked nothing like the cheerful tourist article she had answered online. Instead, broken marble statues leaned beneath ancient oak trees, tangled vines covered forgotten names, and a silence so complete settled over the hills that even the wind seemed afraid to speak. Emma pulled her jacket tighter and checked her camera. It was still dry. At least one thing had gone right today. Thunder rolled across the sky as another wave of rain crashed through the forest. She searched for shelter, weaving between weathered monuments until she noticed something hidden behind thick ivy. Stone steps disappeared beneath the hillside, leading toward a massive doorway carved directly into black rock. Unlike every other grave nearby, this entrance showed no cracks, no erosion, no sign that centuries had passed. Strange symbols spiraled around its frame, untouched by moss, as though time itself refused to claim them. Perfect, Emma muttered. At least I won't drown. She squeezed through the narrow opening just as another flash of lightning lit the valley behind her. The air inside felt strangely warm. Not stale, not dusty. Warm, carrying the faint scent of cedar, old candles, and something she couldn't quite identify. Her flashlight swept across polished stone walls covered in elegant carvings unlike anything she had ever photographed. Crowns, wolves, wings, a circle surrounding a single crimson gemstone embedded in the ceiling far above. None of it belonged in any American cemetery. Curiosity quietly replaced caution. Every instinct told her someone had spent unimaginable wealth protecting whatever rested below. She descended one careful step after another until the passage widened into a breathtaking underground chamber. Massive columns stretched toward darkness overhead, while rows of silent stone guardians stood frozen with lowered swords. At the center rested an enormous black sarcophagus surrounded by silver chains as thick as her wrist. Unlike the rest of the chamber, not a single grain of dust rested upon its polished surface. It looked, waiting. Emma slowly approached, raising her camera. Whoever built this, she whispered, wanted the world to remember. The display screen remained black. Dead battery. Seriously, she sighed. Frustrated, she slipped the camera into her backpack and reached toward the smooth stone lid, hoping to feel the unusual carvings with her fingertips before leaving. At that exact moment, a sharp edge hidden beneath the weathered engraving scraped the side of her finger. She barely felt it. One tiny drop landed on the center symbol. For one endless second, nothing happened. Then the silver chains shivered. A low hum echoed beneath the floor. The crimson gem above awakened with a pulse of soft red light. Ancient dust drifted upward instead of falling. Somewhere beyond the chamber, invisible doors unlocked one after another. Emma's heartbeat accelerated as the air grew colder around her. Please tell me that's an earthquake, she whispered. The stone beneath her palm answered with a slow, unmistakable heartbeat that did not belong to the mountain. Emma stumbled backward as the deep vibration spread through the chamber, her boots scraping across polished stone that somehow reflected the crimson light gathering above. The sound beneath her hand grew stronger. It was steady now, slow, powerful, like the heartbeat of something that had simply been waiting for permission to awaken. Every chain surrounding the enormous sarcophagus tightened for an instant before releasing with a sharp metallic echo that rolled through the underground hall. One by one, ancient lanterns mounted high upon the towering columns burst into pale silver flames without anyone touching them. The chamber transformed from darkness into an eerie cathedral of light. Emma spun in every direction, searching for hidden speakers or some elaborate mechanical system, but there was nothing. No generators, no wires, no footprints except her own. Then she heard footsteps. Not close, far away, dozens of them. Calm, perfectly synchronized. They echoed from tunnels branching beyond the chamber, each measured step drawing nearer. Panic surged through her chest. She rushed toward the staircase she had used only moments earlier, only to freeze. The stone passage had disappeared. In its place stood a seamless wall covered with the same elegant symbols she had admired when entering. There was no door, no crack, no escape. "That is impossible," she whispered, pressing both hands against the cold surface. It did not move. Behind her, another sound filled the chamber. A long, quiet breath. Emma turned so slowly that every muscle in her neck protested. The silver chains surrounding the sarcophagus had fallen silently onto the floor. The massive stone lid shifted no more than an inch, yet that tiny movement felt louder than thunder. Dust did not explode into the air as she expected. Instead, the ancient coffin appeared impossibly clean, as though invisible hands had cared for it every single day through countless generations. Another breath followed. Calm, controlled, human, yet somehow older than the mountain itself. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs. Every reasonable thought screamed that she should run, but there was nowhere left to go. The crimson crystal suspended high above the chamber pulsed again, and the narrow opening between the lid and the coffin widened. A pale hand rested upon the polished edge. Long fingers. Elegant. Completely still. It looked less like someone climbing out of a tomb and more like a king rising from a throne. Emma could not explain why, but the room itself seemed to respond. The silver flames lowered. The air became perfectly still. Even the distant footsteps stopped at once, as though hundreds of unseen people had suddenly fallen to one knee. Slowly, the figure stood. He was impossibly tall, dressed in a black coat embroidered with silver patterns untouched by age. Dark hair rested neatly against shoulders that never seemed to carry the weight of centuries. His face was strikingly pale, almost luminous beneath the crimson light, every feature calm and perfectly composed. Then his eyes opened. They were not glowing with anger or hunger. They were a quiet shade of silver that reflected the chamber like polished mirrors. His gaze settled on Emma without a single word. She expected outrage, confusion, questions. Instead, he looked at her with unmistakable recognition, as though he had been expecting her arrival for a very long time. Before Emma could force herself to speak, the enormous bronze doors at the far end of the chamber swung open together. More than 20 figures entered wearing dark formal uniforms trimmed with crimson. Each possessed the same unnaturally pale complexion, but none dared look directly at the man standing beside the sarcophagus. Every one of them lowered their heads and knelt in absolute silence. The tallest among them finally spoke, his voice trembling with reverence. "Your Majesty, after 600 years. Welcome home." Emma could not move. More than 20 strangers remained kneeling with their heads lowered, yet every instinct told her they were not ordinary people. Their posture carried discipline that felt older than any military ceremony she had ever seen. The man standing beside the ancient sarcophagus did not acknowledge their greeting immediately. Instead, his calm silver eyes remained fixed on Emma, studying her with quiet curiosity rather than suspicion. It was the kind of look someone gave an unexpected answer to a question they had asked centuries earlier. Finally, he turned his attention toward the kneeling figures. "Rise," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried effortlessly across the enormous chamber. No one hesitated. Every figure stood at the exact same moment. The tallest among them stepped forward. His dark hair was touched with silver, and despite his youthful appearance, the respect in every movement suggested remarkable age. He lowered his head once more before speaking. "Your Majesty, the kingdom has waited 600 years for this day." The pale man glanced around the chamber as though awakening from a dream. 600, he repeated softly. There was no fear in his expression, only thoughtful acceptance. Time continued after all. The attendant nodded. The world above has changed beyond recognition. Silence settled again. Emma swallowed hard, finally finding enough courage to speak. I am really sorry." Every face turned toward her. "I did not know this place belonged to anyone. I was only trying to get out of the rain." The attendants exchanged uncertain glances. One younger guard instinctively stepped forward before stopping when the king raised a single finger. The simple gesture required no explanation. Everyone froze instantly. Emma noticed something unusual. They feared disappointing him far more than they feared any enemy. The king slowly approached until only a few feet separated them. Up close, he looked even more unreal. His face seemed untouched by exhaustion, yet his silver eyes carried the quiet weight of countless forgotten winters. His skin appeared almost luminous beneath the silver flames surrounding the chamber, making him look less like a man and more like a figure carved from moonlight itself. "Your name?" he asked. "Emma Carter." She answered without thinking. "I am a photographer." "Well, I am trying to become one." His expression softened by the smallest amount. "Emma Carter." He spoke the name carefully, as though testing unfamiliar words after a very long silence. Then his gaze drifted toward the tiny scratch on her finger. The single drop of blood had disappeared from the polished stone without leaving the slightest mark. "You touched the seal." Emma nodded nervously. "It was an accident." Another long silence followed. Behind the king, whispers quietly spread among the attendants. Emma caught only fragments. "Impossible." The seal accepted her. The prophecy, the old covenant. She did not understand any of it. Before she could ask another question, the chamber itself responded once again. The crimson crystal above them flashed brighter than before, sending waves of warm light across every wall. Ancient symbols carved into the towering columns awakened one after another until the entire hall shimmered with soft golden patterns. The attendants immediately lowered their heads again, this time not toward their king, but toward Emma. Confusion flooded her thoughts. "Why are they looking at me like that?" she asked. No one answered except the king. His quiet voice echoed through the glowing chamber. "Because the tomb did not awaken for me." He held her gaze without blinking. "It awakened for you." Emma stared at Lucian Ashcroft, convinced she had misunderstood him. The tomb had awakened for her. The words echoed through the glowing chamber with impossible weight. "That cannot be true," she said quietly. "I have never been here before today." None of the attendants responded. Instead, they watched the ancient symbols spreading across the towering columns as though witnessing something they had only read about in forgotten records. The tallest attendant lowered his head again. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. "The Hall of Origins has not displayed the golden script since the day the Eternal Seal was created." Lucian remained silent for several moments. His silver eyes drifted upward, following the glowing symbols that now flowed across the stone like streams of living light. Every mark appeared with perfect precision before fading into another, forming sentences written in a language Emma had never seen. Yet strangely, the symbols felt familiar, almost as though some distant part of her remembered them. "What are they saying?" Emma asked. The attendants exchanged uneasy glances. No one answered immediately. Finally, the older attendant spoke in a respectful voice. "None of us can read the complete script anymore. Only fragments survived after the great silence." Emma frowned. "Then how do you know it is important?" "Because it has never appeared during any previous attempt to awaken the king." A quiet breeze suddenly crossed the chamber despite the absence of any visible entrance. The silver flames flickered together, bending toward Emma before returning upright. She instinctively stepped backward. "This place keeps reacting to me." Lucian nodded once. "It does." There was no accusation in his voice, only quiet observation. He slowly approached one of the glowing columns and rested his pale hand upon its polished surface. The golden symbols immediately shifted direction, flowing toward his fingertips before circling back toward Emma in graceful spirals. Even the attendants seemed unsettled by what they witnessed. "The hall recognizes both of you," one whispered under his breath. Another immediately answered, "That has never happened." Emma folded her arms tightly, trying to steady her breathing. "Someone needs to explain what is happening, because I promise you I am the wrong person. I am behind on rent. My truck barely made it up the mountain. I came here because I thought this cemetery would make a good photo series." A faint smile almost reached Lucian's expression before disappearing again. History rarely asks permission before choosing its witnesses. Before Emma could respond, a deep bell echoed somewhere far beyond the chamber. Once, then again, the attendants instantly became alert. The older man turned toward Lucian. "Your Majesty, the council has heard the awakening." Another bell followed, louder this time. "They will already be gathering." Emma looked from one face to another. "Council?" No one appeared relieved by the question. The older attendant answered carefully. "The rulers of the ancient vampire houses. They have governed during your absence for 6 centuries. Lucian's calm expression remained unchanged, but the silver flames surrounding the chamber dimmed slightly, as though sensing an invisible storm approaching. "Do they still honor the old laws?" he asked. No one replied. The silence itself became the answer. Lucian slowly turned toward Emma once more. "Then they will not welcome you." Before Emma could ask why, the enormous bronze doors at the far end of the chamber opened once again. This time no attendants entered. Only a cold wind swept through the hall, carrying with it the unmistakable sound of many measured footsteps approaching from the darkness beyond. Emma instinctively stepped closer to Lucian as the measured footsteps grew louder beyond the bronze doors. She had no idea why. She barely knew his name, yet everyone else in the chamber seemed to regard him as the only steady point in a world that had suddenly begun shifting beneath their feet. The attendants quietly formed two lines without exchanging a single command. Their movements were precise, practiced, and completely silent. Whoever was approaching, they had expected this moment for a very long time. The cold wind disappeared as 7 figures entered the chamber together. They wore elegant black robes trimmed with silver and deep crimson, each decorated with a different ancient crest. None hurried. None appeared surprised by the glowing hall. Their calm expressions suggested they had already prepared themselves for impossible news. The woman walking in front carried herself with quiet authority. Her silver hair was gathered neatly behind her shoulders, and her sharp gray eyes immediately settled on Lucian before shifting toward Emma. Unlike the attendants, she did not kneel. Instead, she offered a respectful incline of her head. "Your Majesty," she said evenly, "the council welcomes your return." Lucian regarded her in silence. "Lady Evelyn." She gave the smallest nod. "You remember me. I remember your father." The words carried no hostility, yet the atmosphere immediately tightened. Emma noticed several council members briefly glance at one another before returning their attention to the king. 600 years had passed, but it was obvious unfinished history still lingered between them. Lady Evelyn slowly stepped farther into the chamber. "The kingdom has remained stable during your absence. We protected your legacy as faithfully as we could." Lucian's expression remained unreadable. "Then why has the hall awakened?" No one answered. Instead, every member of the council looked toward Emma at exactly the same moment. The attention made her stomach tighten. She resisted the urge to step backward. Lady Evelyn finally spoke. "That is precisely why we came." She folded her hands calmly. "The hall has identified a human as its chosen witness." Emma blinked. "I did not volunteer for any of this." A younger council member spoke before anyone else could respond. "Humans have never crossed the eternal threshold." Another quietly added, "No human has ever awakened the hall." Lady Evelyn raised one hand, silencing the discussion. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice polite but carefully measured, "would you be willing to answer several questions?" Emma hesitated before nodding. "I will try. Have you ever visited this mountain?" "No." "Have you studied ancient languages?" "No." "Do you know anyone connected to this place?" Emma shook her head after each question. "I do not even know where I am anymore." The council members exchanged thoughtful looks instead of skeptical ones. Somehow her ordinary answers only seemed to deepen their concern. Lucian watched the exchange quietly before asking a question of his own. "Has the archive remained sealed?" Lady Evelyn's composed expression faltered for the first time. "Yes." "Then there is only one explanation." The chamber fell silent again. Emma looked from one face to another, hoping someone would finally explain what everyone else apparently understood. Lucian turned toward her with the same calm expression he had worn since awakening. "Someone expected you to find this place long before either of us were born." Before Emma could ask what he meant, another pulse of golden light swept through the chamber. This time the glowing symbols did not remain on the walls. They slowly gathered above Emma's head, forming the outline of an ancient crown that shimmered for only a heartbeat before dissolving into countless points of light. The last traces of golden light faded into the air, but the silence they left behind felt heavier than before. Emma slowly lifted her hand, half expecting to see something glowing above her skin. There was nothing except the tiny scratch on her finger that had started everything. "Someone has to tell me what that was," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Because I know enough to realize normal people do not accidentally walk into ancient tombs and end up surrounded by glowing crowns." No one smiled. Even Lady Evelyn looked unusually unsettled. Lucian stepped toward the center of the chamber, his long black coat barely stirring across the polished stone floor. "Bring the archive stone," he said. The command was quiet, yet every attendant moved immediately. Two guardians disappeared through a narrow passage before returning moments later carrying a dark marble pedestal no taller than a coffee table. Resting upon it was a smooth crystal sphere filled with swirling silver mist. It seemed almost alive, changing shape with every heartbeat. Emma stared at it cautiously. "What is that?" The older attendant answered with careful respect. "It preserves the oldest memories of the kingdom. It reveals only what the hall permits." Lucian rested one pale hand upon the crystal. The silver mist brightened before settling again. Nothing happened. He looked toward Emma. "Place your hand beside mine." Emma hesitated. "Last time I touched something around here, an entire underground palace woke up." For the first time, several attendants exchanged expressions that almost resembled amusement. Even Lucian's calm face softened ever so slightly. "A reasonable concern," he admitted. "But we cannot move forward without answers." Emma slowly approached. The crystal felt unexpectedly warm beneath her fingertips. For one silent heartbeat, absolutely nothing happened. Then the mist inside the sphere began spinning faster and faster until the entire chamber reflected shimmering silver light. Images appeared above the crystal like living memories. Emma gasped. She saw the same mountain standing beneath a clear night sky, except there was no cemetery. Instead, an enormous castle crowned the summit, its towers glowing beneath thousands of lanterns. Crowds filled the courtyards while banners bearing the same crimson symbol fluttered in the wind. The vision shifted. Lucian appeared, dressed in ceremonial robes, standing beside people whose faces remained hidden beneath brilliant light. Another image followed. A woman wearing a simple traveling cloak stepped forward and placed both hands upon a stone altar. Her face remained blurred, impossible to recognize, but one detail stood out immediately. Around her neck hung the exact silver compass Emma had inherited from her late grandmother, the same compass now resting inside Emma's backpack. Her breath caught. "That cannot be," Emma whispered. Instinctively, she reached into her backpack with trembling hands. The old compass was still there. The worn silver case looked exactly as it always had, except now faint golden lines slowly appeared across its surface, matching the ancient symbols glowing throughout the chamber. Lady Evelyn drew a slow breath. "The heir's compass." One council member quietly shook his head. "We believed it had vanished forever." Emma looked from the compass to Lucian in complete disbelief. "My grandmother gave this to me when I was 12. She said it had belonged to our family for generations." Lucian studied the ancient instrument with growing certainty before meeting Emma's eyes once more. "Then your family has been protecting far more than a simple keepsake." As if responding to his words, the compass needle suddenly turned by itself. It did not point north. It pointed directly toward a sealed stone doorway hidden behind the throne-like sarcophagus, a doorway that had not existed only moments before. Every eye in the chamber followed the silver compass as its needle remained perfectly still, pointing toward the hidden stone doorway behind the ancient sarcophagus. Emma tightened her grip on the small heirloom, trying to convince herself there had to be a logical explanation. Old compasses broke. Old buildings shifted. None of that explained why this one had suddenly awakened after spending years forgotten in the bottom of her backpack. Lucian stepped beside her and studied the sealed doorway in silence. The surface looked identical to the surrounding wall except for a faint circular outline that slowly emerged beneath the golden symbols spreading across the stone. "That entrance was not here when I entered my sleep," he said quietly. Lady Evelyn frowned. "None of the council has ever recorded a second chamber." One of the attendants lowered his voice. "Perhaps it only appears when the hall accepts its witness." Emma sighed. "Everyone keeps calling me that, but I still have no idea what I am supposed to witness." Lucian looked toward the glowing doorway instead of answering. "Perhaps we are about to find out." As though responding to his words, the compass grew warmer inside Emma's hand. The needle began moving again, not in frantic circles, but with slow purpose. It lifted slightly above the glass as if pulled by an invisible force, then settled once more. A quiet clicking sound echoed from inside the stone wall. One lock, then another. Ancient mechanisms hidden for centuries awakened one by one. Dust drifted gently from the ceiling as the circular outline widened into a perfectly shaped doorway. The heavy stone did not fall outward. Instead, it slid silently into the wall, revealing a narrow corridor illuminated by rows of soft blue lights that had somehow remained alive through 600 years of silence. Cool air flowed from the passage carrying the scent of cedar, parchment, and rain. Emma blinked in disbelief. That room has been waiting this entire time. Lucian nodded slowly. Or waiting for someone. Before anyone could step forward, the corridor answered for itself. Small crystal lanterns brightened one after another, forming a path that stopped at an elegant pedestal standing alone in the distance. Resting upon it was a single leather journal bound with silver clasps. Nothing else occupied the hidden chamber. No treasure, no weapons, only the waiting book. Lady Evelyn spoke first. Why would anyone hide a journal beneath the king's resting place? Lucian's expression grew thoughtful. Because words can outlive kingdoms. Emma took one cautious step into the corridor before stopping. Should I really be the one doing this? None of the attendants moved. None of the council objected. Every person present simply looked toward Lucian. He met Emma's uncertain gaze and gave the smallest nod. The hall opened the path for you. It is your choice whether to continue. Emma inhaled slowly. Every sensible instinct urged her to walk away, yet another feeling had quietly replaced her fear. It was not confidence. It was responsibility. She carefully approached the pedestal until the old journal rested only inches away. The silver clasps released by themselves with a soft metallic click. The cover slowly opened without being touched. On the first page, written in elegant flowing script that somehow appeared fresh despite its age, were only 8 words. Emma read them aloud before she could stop herself. To the girl who finally found her way home. The moment the last word left her lips, Lucian closed his eyes for a brief second, as though he had just recognized a voice he believed had been lost forever. Emma's voice faded into the silent chamber, yet the words she had read seemed unwilling to disappear. They lingered in the air like an echo carried across centuries. No one moved. Even the silver flames remained perfectly still. Lucian slowly opened his eyes again, his calm expression hiding something deeper than surprise. It was recognition mixed with quiet sorrow. He stepped toward the ancient journal, but the pages turned by themselves before he could touch them. Soft golden light flowed between the parchment sheets, revealing lines of elegant handwriting that neither time nor dust had managed to erase. Emma looked down and blinked in confusion. I can read it. Lady Evelyn immediately looked up. That language has been lost for generations. Emma shook her head. I have never seen these symbols before, but somehow, I know what they mean. She swallowed carefully before continuing to read aloud. If these words are spoken, then the keeper has returned, and the king has awakened before the appointed hour. A quiet murmur spread through the attendants. Lucian remained completely silent. Emma continued, each sentence becoming clearer as though someone invisible guided her understanding. The kingdom was never meant to sleep forever. It was meant to wait until the bloodline of the keeper found the compass once more. Emma stopped reading and looked at the old silver compass resting in her hand. Keeper, she whispered. Lady Evelyn slowly lowered her head. There are only fragments of that title remaining in our oldest records. Lucian gently rested one hand upon the edge of the journal. This time the pages did not resist him. Read the next passage, he said quietly. Emma nodded. The letters shimmered again. The keeper shall never rule the kingdom. The keeper shall protect its memory. When the king forgets hope, the keeper shall remind him. When darkness seeks the throne, both must stand together or neither shall remain. Emma looked up. This sounds less like a prophecy and more like instructions. Lucian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Perhaps that is exactly what it is. The journal turned another page without assistance. A detailed drawing appeared across both sheets. It showed the mountain exactly as it had looked centuries earlier, crowned by the magnificent castle Emma had seen inside the crystal vision. Beneath the illustration stretched a network of hidden passages reaching far below the surface. One chamber was marked with a crimson circle, another with a silver crown. A third location glowed with fresh golden light as Emma watched. The symbol appeared directly beneath the northern cliffs several miles from the hall. Lady Evelyn leaned closer. That mark was not there a moment ago. Lucian studied the changing map with growing focus. Neither was the pathway. Emma traced the glowing route with one finger without touching the page. It ends here. At the very edge of the map, elegant writing slowly revealed itself beneath the moving light. Emma read the final sentence aloud. The first key has awakened. The second waits where the stars meet the water. The journal closed gently by itself. The golden light vanished. For several long seconds no one spoke. Then one of the younger attendants hurried into the hidden chamber, breathing faster than before despite his composed posture. He bowed respectfully toward Lucian. "Your Majesty, scouts have returned from the northern valley." Lucian looked up calmly. "Report." The attendant hesitated only briefly. "The lake beneath the cliffs has begun to glow for the first time in 600 years. The announcement settled over the chamber like the final note of an ancient bell. No one questioned the scout. No one doubted what he had seen. Lucian's silver eyes shifted toward the hidden map that had already faded back into the journal's worn pages. "It is guiding us," she whispered. Lucian nodded. "The journey has already begun." Lady Evelyn folded her hands thoughtfully. "If the second key has awakened, then others may also recognize the signs." Emma looked at her. "Others? There are still people in the world who remember fragments of the old stories," Lady Evelyn replied. "Most dismiss them as legends. Tonight they may discover they were history." The attendants quietly prepared for departure. Long dark coats were brought forward, lanterns were lit, and the massive bronze doors leading out of the hall opened completely for the first time in centuries. Beyond them stretched a passage climbing steadily toward the surface where faint moonlight now filtered through the distant entrance. The storm had passed. Emma stood motionless for another moment. Less than a day earlier, her greatest concern had been paying next month's rent and finding enough freelance work to keep her old pickup truck running. Now she was standing beside a king who had slept for 600 years, holding an heirloom that apparently belonged to an ancient bloodline she had never known existed. None of it felt real, yet the cool weight of the compass in her hand reminded her that reality had quietly changed the moment she entered the forgotten tomb. Lucian stepped beside her. "You still have a choice." Emma looked up. "A choice? The path ahead will not be ordinary. If you leave now, no one here will stop you." She glanced toward the open passage leading back to the modern world. Somewhere beyond those mountains were highways, coffee shops, unpaid bills, and the ordinary life she had always believed was her future. Then she looked back toward the glowing hall, the ancient journal, and the people who had waited centuries for answers. The compass gave one gentle pulse of warmth against her palm. Emma smiled despite herself. "Honestly, I stopped having ordinary Tuesdays a long time ago." A quiet expression of approval crossed Lucian's face. "Then let us continue." Together they walked toward the ascending passage while the attendants followed several respectful steps behind. As they reached the final staircase, pale moonlight spilled across the stone floor. Emma paused at the entrance and looked back one last time. The silver flames inside the hall slowly dimmed until only a single light remained burning beside the empty sarcophagus. It looked less like the ending of an ancient story and more like the opening page of a new one. Far beyond the mountain, beneath the northern cliffs, the calm surface of the hidden lake shimmered beneath the stars. At its center, a single circle of golden light slowly rose from the water, as though something beneath had finally opened its eyes. Neither Emma nor Lucian could see it yet, but somewhere in the quiet darkness another forgotten secret was already waiting for them, proving that even after 600 years, destiny was only getting started.